Om Shanti, good evening, Namaste, and a welcome to all of you. So, today we all have gathered here for a special session on the topic of finding balance through self care. And before we go on to the topic, let me take the opportunity to introduce you to the Brahma Kumaris. I'm sure since you all have got the invitation for the session, so you would be knowing, but I'll still give you a bit of a detail about the organization. So, the Brahma Kumaris is a spiritual organization that was established way back in 1937 in undivided India. And over the last so many years, it has spread to 137 countries across the world. And that itself is something that tells us that it's absolutely a spiritual organization where people of all creeds, caste, religion, backgrounds, age, gender, everyone can come and take benefit for themselves. And the aim of the organization is absolutely working on the self towards self transformation and leading a better life. We have our headquarters in Mount Abu, India, and that is where our speaker today, Charlie Bhai, is at the moment. And we are also affiliated to the United Nations, having a consultative status with ECOSOC and UNICEF. And we are working as an NGO. And the Brahma Kumaris has different wings, like the women's wing, the art and culture, youth, scientists, engineers, doctors. So wherever we are, in whatever profession we are, we can actually practice spirituality in our daily lives in the field, because people feel it's something for the old age. When we retire, we'll remember God. But this is the fact that Charlie Bai started at a very young age, and he's been practicing meditation for the last 45 years. And at present, he's the national coordinator of the Brahma Kumaris in Australia. And as many of you might have got the invitation, that he will be with us in Pune for the retreat last weekend, but due to some reasons, he had to cancel his plans. But you all had a very strong thought for having his session, so we got him online for you today. So he has agreed to spend 90 minutes with us today on this topic. And the program, as you know, is being hosted by Jagdamba Bhawan, which is a retreat center in Pune, and we have completed about 4 years. We'll share more information towards the end of the session about the retreat center. But what I would like to say about the topic today is really sometimes we are looking after our families, our work, the people, the society, the people around us, the responsibilities, and we actually forget to look after ourselves. So really finding that balance, because sometimes people think if they're caring for themselves, it's being selfish. But actually, you need to find the balance to care for others while first caring for yourself. So I invite Charlie Bhai to share his deep wisdom, and his specialty is he shares it in very simple and easy way for us to understand, but it's very, very deep. So over to you, Charlie Bhai. We can't hear you, on mute. No, the system is on mute.
I'm sorry. Thank
No
you so
problem.
much, Sister Nikki. It's really a delight to be with you. And I was so looking forward to being in Pune last weekend, because in my memory, I think the last time I visited was around 40 years ago. And anyway, I wasn't able to come, but it's really delightful to be able to meet everyone online in our new world where everything has become virtual. You know, self-care is really, I would say, one of the most important subjects of life today. We live in an extraordinary world, 195 countries, 7.9 billion human beings, 6,500 spoken languages, That's how many languages are still in use, and 4,500 religions. What an extraordinary world we live in. But that's what I would call the external world, or perhaps the world that we connect with through our sense organs. It's the world we see, we hear, we interact with on a daily basis. But there's another world which is really, I would say, my internal world, which is equally extraordinary. And you know, scientists tell us that this human mind, which is really the center of my life, my whole world happens in my mind. Some scientists say that in a waking day of 16 hours, we create around 70,000 unique thought patterns. Amazing. So sometimes I have the image in my mind that 7.9 billion human beings, each one pumping out 70,000 thoughts into the atmosphere. It's almost like we live in this thought soup. And I think no matter where you live in the planet at the moment, whether it's India, whether it's Australia, where I'm based, we're watching our world going down so quickly. We're watching our world degrading, declining on almost all levels. But what is feeding it? What is feeding it? I would say it's the collective human mind. When the collective human mind is full of greed, we've created this materialistic culture which is really destroying our environment and destroying our planet. When the collective human mind is full of ego, we're just caught up in self-interest, and we've lost that most natural of human things, to have compassion and love and understanding and respect of each other. When the collective human mind is full of anger, we have a world full of so much conflict and so many differences. And so we're starting to see that our inner world feeds the outer world and is creating the world in which we're living at the moment. We need balance. When we neglect our inner world, this is the world we have. When we neglect self-care, when we really neglect our innate spirituality, the result is what we're seeing around us in really all levels of life. And I think one of my greatest lessons in this incredible life of spirituality, which is the life of self-learning, the life of self-care, is to find a balance. And balance is actually unique to all of us. But fundamentally, there are three things that we have to balance. Our family. You know, our family nurtures us with love and belonging. How important is that? But also our work or our career. It gives me a purpose in life. But the third thing is the self, is me. And if I was to ask all of you, if I could speak to all of you now and ask you, which one of those three do I neglect? Is it my family? Is it my work? Or is it myself? I know the answer already. I know what you're going to say. It's me. Why do we do that? Why do we neglect the self? Because when I care for myself, actually I'm a much nicer person to live with in the family. I'm a much nicer person to work with, a colleague in the workplace. You know, what is happiness? To me, I would say happiness is when all parts of my life are moving forward. I'm growing with my family. I'm improving in my relationships. I'm also developing and growing in the workplace. But thirdly, I'm also beginning to know who I am, connect with who I am, and learn how to care for my inner self. When all three are moving forward, really we have a life of balance. What is pressure? I would say pressure is when I neglect a part of my life. It's a well-known fact that if men, and sometimes women, but men especially, are not happy in the family, unfortunately the marriage may not be going so well. they lose themselves in work to compensate for that unhappiness. They lose themselves in work and often become a workaholic. And often when we're not really happy in the family or happy at work, then, or happy in myself, you know, I lose myself in the outer world to compensate for this sort of, this discomfort which I feel inside.
Charlie Bhai, sorry to interrupt you. I forgot to announce that we have Hindi translation available. So I'll just announce for that. किसी को भी अगर हिंदी में translation चाहिए तो नीचे आपको interpretation globe का sign दिखाई देगा, उस पे क्लिक करेंगे और हिंदी ऑप्शन सेलेक्ट करेंगे तो आपको हिंदी में ट्रांसलेशन सुनाई देगा. Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you, Sister Nikki. Actually, you know, I've been to India nearly 100 times and I should be speaking to you in Hindi, but I'm afraid my Hindi is very, very poor.
It's okay.
Anyway, I hope everyone is getting the translation.
Yeah, thank you.
And I would say that, you know, one of the things of self-care sometimes is to sit very quietly and ask my heart, you know, have a conversation with myself. This is really spirituality, and ask my heart, what do I want most in my life? What is most important? Actually, it's not complicated at all. You know, when you go deep, 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 there's 3 things that all of us need for a balanced life of self-care: peace, love, and happiness. And perhaps the real question is not what do I want, but how do I really access peace, love, and happiness in my life? How can I have a constant tap flowing of those qualities into my inner being, which will nurture me and make me a much better family member and colleague at work? This is spirituality. And I wonder, if I was to ask you, what is success to you? What do you see as success? You know, what we receive from the world today in images which are maybe, you know, subtle images or even very overt images, is that success is wealth, status, and power. I don't really feel comfortable with that image of success, and yet we get fed it constantly through the media, and constantly even in our social circles as well. To me, a successful person is someone who can say from their heart, I like being me, I feel happy in my life. I wonder how many people you know are successful by that definition. You know, I remember seeing some data in Australia some years ago that in the 70s and 80s, when parents were asked about their children, what they want for them in life, you know, most of the parents said, I want my child to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a professional person. You know what they say now in the last 20 years? When they ask parents, what do you want for your child? I want them to be happy. Because we can see a world where there's so much mental illness, emotional illness, and it's just creeping in every corner. And happiness, and to remain happy, I would say, is really the sign of real success in life. And there was a Greek philosopher, Sophocles, and Sophocles once said that wisdom is the supreme art of happiness, that the ultimate wisdom in life is to be happy. You know, it's good to get a PhD and so on, but really, real wisdom is to remain happy in this very challenging world in which we live. Then what is ignorance? You know, what is the ultimate ignorance? When we experience sadness, sorrow, hurt, and pain. In one way, we could perhaps say that whenever I feel a bit sad or hurt, upset, a little bit depressed or anxious, it's a little message from life telling me I lack wisdom somewhere. And this is the whole journey of spirituality and self-care, is to actually access that wisdom that will help me maintain a sense of well-being, And when I maintain a sense of well-being, it automatically transmits to my family, my children, and people around me. And I feel at this time we need a new wisdom. In life we have three main wisdoms that we need for a balanced and full life. The first is my intellectual ability, my IQ. And that's a very important aspect of life. It helps me pass exams, it helps me get a good job, I make money, I care for my family. But when I do feel depressed, anxious, afraid, does this wisdom help? I don't think so. My IQ, or this intellectual ability, helps me with my external life, my external well-being, but it doesn't really help me with my internal well-being or how to care for my internal world. The second, as we know, is emotional intelligence, what they call EQ today, which fundamentally is the wisdom to build rich, loving relationships with others. How important is that? How important is that skill in life? And a person with emotional intelligence can read people, read their faces, and know how to respond. But if there's conflict, if there's separation, if there's a loss in life, a loss of a family member, does this wisdom help? I don't think so. So emotional intelligence does help me with my relationship well-being, but it doesn't really help me with my internal well-being or my personal well-being, my personal care. The third wisdom is spiritual intelligence. And I would say if emotional intelligence is the wisdom to build rich, loving relationships with others, spiritual intelligence is the wisdom to build a rich, loving relationship with me. I would say this is at the heart of self-care. The first relationship in life is with me. And if this relationship is unhealthy, it will influence my family, my work, how I feel, absolutely everything. You know, my feeling sometimes when I see the chaos in our planet at the moment, I often feel, where does it begin? It begins with this first relationship, me with me. Because there's 7.9 billion human beings struggling with this relationship with the self, then it pollutes the atmosphere. It affects absolutely everything. Not only my relationships with others and my work, even my physical health and well-being too. And you know, sometimes we learn to have self-confidence. We actually learn to have the confidence to manage a company, speak in front of people, do things. It doesn't mean I feel comfortable with who I am. I have self-respect. And this is why I think, you know, spirituality is something that is so important. Because at the moment there's like a crisis in the soul of humanity. And when this crisis bubbles to the surface, we put labels on it. We call it stress, we call it anxiety, we call it depression. There's a deep discomfort inside because of this lack of self-awareness and this lack of self-care. Depression in psychology is a sadness that my dream in life to be loved and valued and respected hasn't really happened. But in spirituality, depression is like a mourning for the loss of my true identity. I'm living my life, I have a family, I have a job, but really, who am I? Who am I really? And when this culture, this, I call it the outside-in culture, you know, this culture breeds a whole sort of atmosphere in our world. We look outside for everything we need inside. And what is important is, you know, my business card, my title on my business card, where I live, what sort of car I drive, all these incredibly superficial things. The result? A lack of true meaning and purpose in life. And then this big emptiness inside. You know that empty feeling? this discomfort. On the surface, I have material things, I have a good job and everything, but inside I'm feeling so empty. There's a meaningless in life. How do we fill that emptiness? With busyness. Just keep running, just keep running, just keep busy. Because when we stop to think too much, we start to slide into that sadness, even a depression, because it seems I'm on this treadmill of doing, working, but actually, what's the point of it all ultimately? Why am I doing this? I remember once I attended a gathering in Oxford in the UK, and the Brahma Kumaris have a beautiful centre which is leased from Oxford University. It's nearly 400 years old, and it's on the Thames River. And there was a gathering of leaders from around the world. And one of them was from the House of Lords in London. And Daddy Jenki, who was the former head of the Brahma Kumaris, was there. And she was talking about these things about self-care. And you know, one of this man from the House of Lords, very lovely person, he said to her, Daddy, I love what you're talking about, but I just don't have time. And Daddy Jenki's response was, busyness is for lazy people. It was an extraordinary expression, because often we're so busy in the external world, but we're lazy to care for my internal world. And really, I would say coming into the future, finding a balance in my life to give time to self-care is not just a good thing to do, it's absolutely and totally essential. So let us begin the journey to self-care. Where do I begin? And really, I would say I begin with the relationship with myself, knowing who I am. This is the seed and the essence of actually bringing transformation in my life, starting to feel more peaceful and calm in my life, by actually going inside and accessing the truth of who I am. And when I ask myself that question, who am I wonder what comes into your mind. Because for me, when I think of it, there's like 3 personalities inside all of us. I would say 2 of those personalities make me very peaceless and feel very empty and lack of fulfillment. But one of them starts to give me a sense of peace, a sense of meaning, and a sense of satisfaction. And the first personality I call the I of arrogance, or the I of superiority. And this personality takes this whole sense of self from the labels of my body. I see myself as a whole series of labels, you know, my gender, my profession, my nationality, my religion, etc. And when this I is ruling, when my ego is ruling my inner system, I compare with others and I begin to think, I am better, I know more, I am right. And when it comes into my feelings, when my ego is ruling my inner system, that's when I feel so easily insulted, disrespected, not valued, excluded, sensitive. Sensitivity is actually ego. And so often, you know, we feel very hurt by things, but we don't really realize that I'm being deceived by my ego when I start to feel all these feelings inside. And so that first personality actually makes me feel quite empty and peaceless. The second personality, I would say, is, I call it the I of inferiority, or the I of lack of self-respect. In fact, it's inverted ego. And this personality always also takes this whole sense of identity from this temporary body. This body is temporary. I see myself as that series of labels. And when this I is ruling my inner world, I compare with others and I think others are better. Others know more. Others are right. Others don't love me. Others don't value me. Others don't respect me. And when it comes into my feelings, when my lack of self-value, my inverted ego is ruling my inner system, I can feel hopeless about myself, inadequate, inferior, unworthy, and as I was saying before, depressed even. Like a sense of hopelessness fills my inner world. And I would say whenever I have those feelings, know I'm being deceived by my false self. My false self is ruling my inner world. So what happens in life? Because I think I'm a temporary body, these two children of body consciousness, my ego of superiority and my ego of inferiority, make me go up and down. One day I'm up, the next day I'm down. 1 hour I'm up, the next hour I'm down. I'm fluctuating greatly. We begin the journey of self-care by actually connecting with my intrinsic self. And the third eye is what I would call the original I. And this I is a wonder that I am the soul. The soul is extraordinary. And recently I've been thinking of this in a way that science tells us that this body is made up of 40 trillion cells. I think that's unbelievable, 40 trillion cells. But the soul is something unique. The soul is something quite separate from this physical form. I am a unique being. I, the soul, have no gender, no profession, no nationality, no religion. And when I start to really connect with my intrinsic self, that I'm the eternal, immortal, non-physical being. Actually, you all know this. We all know it. And we even believe that I'm the soul, the spirit, the Atma. The Atma meaning I, the living being, acting through this physical body. And yet, we don't really experience it. And I would say that really meditation, the first step of meditation, is really the first step of healthcare, is the first step of self-care, is to reconnect with my intrinsic self, the soul. And when I begin to do that, actually it begins to shift everything. It's like I come home to a place in myself where I really belong, where I feel so easy about myself, where I take the pressure off myself to look good, to impress other people, to be noticed. I begin to connect with myself and accept myself. And I begin to feel the pulse of my inner world. What do I need? And I begin to realize that the intrinsic nature of the self is peace. And when I meditate, I don't have to sit there and think I must be peaceful, I must be peaceful, I must be peaceful. No. All I have to do is know and experience who I am as the soul, the spirit, the Atma, and automatically peace begins to emerge. When I connect with my intrinsic self, naturally I reconnect with my inner peace. And so I would say that my inner world is like a tree, if I can say that. And we know a tree has a seed, a trunk, branches and leaves. My thoughts are like the leaves, you know, on a huge tree, literally tens of thousands, or as you say, lakhs of leaves are on a huge tree. But, we overthink a lot. But what is really feeding those leaves, those thoughts, is the branches, which is my mental and emotional patterns. We all have these mental and emotional habits. Some of us are perfectionists, etc. But what is actually feeding my mental and emotional patterns is my subconscious. The subconscious, which is really the trunk, I would say. Freud said that 90% of my behaviors were influenced by my subconscious. But what is actually the seed that's feeding the trunk, feeding the branches and feeding the leaves, is my sense of self-identity. When the seed of my identity is that I'm a temporary body, it influences my subconscious. It influences all my mental and emotional patterns, and my mind is hyperactive. Why? Because the seed is false. The seed is not true. But when I sow the seed of truth, that I am an eternal, immortal soul, a point of life energy, and the soul is extraordinary. It exists, but it has no length, breadth, or width. It is so subtle. It sits in the center of the forehead, in the front of the brain, around the pituitary gland. As you know, the soul has lived before this body, and the soul will live after this body. As I begin to really connect with myself, I've taken a massive step in self-care, because automatically I begin to withdraw a quality of peace that nurtures my mind, and a quality of love that begins to nurture my heart too. So what I'd like to do is just invite us, just for a couple of minutes, to just meditate, reflect. And I'd love us, wherever we are, just to sit quietly, put down distractions, devices and things, and just follow these few thoughts. Life today tells me it's essential to care for my inner world. I begin that care by knowing and experiencing who I am, and letting go all the layers of identity that I've collected. In this journey to my true self, let me begin by letting go, identifying with what I do. My career, even my role as a partner, a parent. That is not who I am. That is what I do. Just feel yourself gently letting go, stepping back, withdrawing from identifying with what I do. And now just visualize the image of your body and all the labels of your body, your gender, your nationality, your age, your religion. These are all the labels of my body, but they are all temporary. This is not who I am. These are just the image or the representation of my body. So just feel yourself stepping back from the image of your body, withdrawing, letting go, and even let me begin to let go identifying with my story. What has happened to me, how people have treated me, the whole story going around my mind. Just feel yourself stepping back, withdrawing, and feel yourself sitting so lightly in the void. I, the eternal soul, beyond my role, beyond the image of my body, even beyond the past. I am a peaceful soul. Just feel yourself relaxing. Just completely relax. And allow yourself to taste your intrinsic and original state of peace. The more I reconnect with myself, the more I feel peace and love and happiness internally. And this begins to influence my family life and influence my working life. Thank you, everybody. Firstly, in the journey to self-care, I need to know and experience who I am, the intrinsic self. And automatically I release peace into my system. But secondly, I need a quality of love in my life. When I reflect on what I value in my life, it's definitely the experience of love. I've noticed that when I feel love, I feel quite content, quite satisfied, and much more compassionate and understanding towards others. But when the heart lacks love, the mind can never rest. Something is missing. The agitated mind, it's searching, seeking, looking. Something is missing. The first desire in life is love. The first need in life is love. And when that desire is not fulfilled, a million other desires emerge in my heart. The desire for recognition, the desire for respect, the desire for wealth. All these things come because the most intrinsic need for true self-care is not with me. And sometimes I think the subtext of human life is this search for true love. We invest our heart in relationships. We give absolutely everything. But there's a huge human dilemma, and that is that no relationship is permanent. Whether it's time, whether it's change, whether it's conflict, whether it's death, the object of my love will go. It's made us so deeply fearful and insecure. But spirituality offers us a permanent source of love. And that is a relationship. The most intrinsic nature of the human soul is to have relationship. And this is a relationship with the Supreme Soul. And I see the self as a soul, a point that sits on the forehead. I, the soul, have taken birth and rebirth and reaped the fruit of my actions. I know happiness, I know sorrow. But there's one soul that's really beyond this game. A divine soul, a pure soul, an unlimited source of love. It's not a concept or a belief, but a real living being. The Supreme Soul, or Paramatma. And really the second step of self-care is really to connect I, the soul, with the source of love. And I often think of it, it's like the Supreme Soul is on the FM wavelength. We know the radio wavelengths. When I, the soul, am body conscious, I'm on the AM wavelength. I can believe in God, but I can't connect. In a way, this is religion, more a belief, a devotion towards God. But actually, when we meditate, I become soul conscious. I move up to the FM wavelength. I'm resonating on the same frequency. It's a real, living relationship. And sometimes I think there's three sources of love in life. From the self, from the divine or God, and from my family and friends. For most of us, this relationship with the self is not healthy today. We fluctuate in our self-value. And for many of us, we think, well, who is God? And even if I have faith in God, perhaps I don't really experience a deep sense of love and belonging and care. So my one source of love is my family and my friends. And this is why when there's a problem in the family, there is differences, there's conflict, there's death. It's like my whole world goes into absolute chaos and upheaval. What is spirituality? What is self-care? The first step is to have a loving relationship with myself as a soul. The second is a loving relationship with the Supreme Soul. And when I build that platform in my life, this is permanent and this will nurture me and feed me constantly. So my inner world is full. And so when I come into my outer world, to my family, to my work, to my friends, I am full. I have something to give. This is really at the heart of spirituality. And really what the Brahma Kumaris offer is this awareness of the self as the soul and how to have a real living relationship with the Supreme Being or the Supreme Soul. And my experience these days, and I do travel a lot, is that, when we talk about meditation, which is, perhaps we say, the union of the self with the divine, the union of the soul with God, a lot of people really deeply want to meditate. They have such an innate desire to access that love, access that connection, but feel that meditation is too hard. When I sit to meditate, my mind goes everywhere. And so many times I meet people say, I've tried, but I can't do it. And this is why what I've learned in the Brahma Kumaris is the word remembrance. We just remember. Why? Because the most natural thing for the human soul or the human intellect is to remember. And I believe true spirituality is absolutely natural. If I'm sitting and forcing myself, pushing myself, pressuring myself, is that going to work? No. And the method really of meditation is just to remember. And when I actually have love, this intrinsic nature to all of us to love, we don't have to learn, it's intrinsic. So when there's first love for the divine, then that natural nature means I will naturally remember the divine. And when I naturally remember the divine, I naturally transform. I naturally begin to care for myself inside. And when I remember, three things are happening. It's a very interesting process. The intellect is beyond time and space. It can travel instantly anywhere into the past or to the other side of the world. So you sit here, the soul, you remember a person, you connect with them, and instantly you're influenced by the quality of your relationship, and then you download a feeling inside. So first you connect, second you're influenced, thirdly you have a feeling. So if you connect with a family member whom you have a really good relationship with, a loving relationship, instantly you're influenced by that love and you feel peaceful, you feel calm. But if you connect, if even now as I'm talking you connect with a family member that you're not getting on with, there's conflict, there's differences, the instant you connect you feel anxious, you feel uncomfortable, and you start to live stream that energy back in your mind. The logic here is that as I go about my life and I start to remember the Supreme Soul, I connect with a source that's an unlimited ocean of love, of peace, of purity, of power. I'm influenced by that, and I start to live stream that energy into the sacred space of the mind. And really my image of life today is that as we go about, we keep plugging into things. We plug into a person. If there's a good relationship, I feel okay. We plug into a situation that's not going well, I'm influenced by that, I don't feel okay. I keep plugging in everywhere, and my moods and my state of mind goes up and down. What we begin to learn here, the ultimate state of self-care, is to plug into this unlimited source of beauty. And it's absolutely real. It's not my imagination. It's not just an intellectual concept. It's not a religious belief. I'm connecting with a living being, a living soul, a real personality, but a soul that does not have a body, a pure being. And when I learn how to have this connection, really, I feel full inside. This is my own experience. And I would really say that if ever you don't feel happy, and we all have that experience sometimes, just ask yourself one question. There's only one question to ask yourself. What have I been remembering? What have I plugged my thinking, my mind, and my intellect to? And you'll notice, often we dwell on a personality and their behavior, and then we wonder why I'm not feeling good. Or we dwell on an anxiety about the future, and then we wonder why I'm not feeling good. I keep connecting with these wrong sources. And what we're offering here is a source that is absolutely constant in all the nutrients that my mind and heart need. A quality of love, a quality of peace, a quality of power, and a quality of happiness. And this is why really the second step of self-care is to develop this relationship with the Supreme Soul. And I would suggest just to practice. What I do is, as I go about my life, I often give myself, as I have a very busy life, I have a lot of responsibilities, but I challenge myself just to remain aware of who I am, whether I'm in a meeting, whatever I'm doing, and remember the Supreme Soul. And when I do, that's the influence on me. So the atmosphere of the meeting or the personalities of the meeting don't have so much influence on me. And so I'm living in the world, but I found a balance because I'm caring for my inner world by knowing and experiencing who I am, and also knowing and experiencing and developing this relationship with the Supreme Being, the Supreme Soul. The third thing I feel to really find balance in my life and to nurture myself is this world seems to become faster and faster and more stressful, is to put a little structure into every single day. As Nikki was saying at the beginning, I began to meditate when I was just 22. I think over nearly 47 years, I've never missed a day of my meditation. And what that's done for me is that every morning I wake up, and before I allow my mind to think about what happened yesterday, what I have to do today, I sit and I go deep within and I reconnect. I let go of the consciousness of my body and I become this subtle intrinsic being, and I just feel this fragrance of peace just fill my inner being, fill my heart, fill my mind. I cool down. And then I sit in front of the divine and I allow myself to be loved. I'm absolutely amazed just how my inner world becomes so still, I would say even silent. And then I get so much clarity to think, well, if there is an issue I'm facing or a problem, what do I need to do? And how can I respond to that problem with the highest integrity and respect for myself and others? And so I need to put a little structure into every day. Meditation is for action. Meditation is for life. Sometimes we think meditation is withdrawing. It's actually the opposite. Because in each morning when I sit and I sow the highest quality of thoughts in my mind, these are the seeds that keep influencing my actions and my behavior during the day. So when I filled my mind with peace and love in the early morning, as I interact with people, those feelings come through me as well. It has an influence on how I feel and an influence on my relationships too. And you know, we meditate with our eyes open so that we can really bring my spirituality into my life. And once I was in San Francisco at the University of California, and I was a guinea pig for a scientist who was experimenting with meditation. And she asked me, she was really interested. It's a fact, you can Google thousands of sites that tell you meditators can calm themselves down. There's a lot of mental, emotional, and physical health benefits in doing that. But what she was interested in, okay, you can meditate, but when you go back into your challenging life situations, challenging family situations, challenging work situations, does meditation benefit, or does it just fly out the window and my old personality returns? And I had to sit in this little room, and they put electrodes all over me, and they were registering, my thought quality. And she gave me all these questions, and I had to do all these things. Like, she was like putting me under pressure, like at work. You have to do things and achieve things in a certain amount of time. I had to count backwards from 1,017s and give her the closest answer to 0. So many things she asked me to do. And when I finished, she said, the people who meditate with their eyes open carry the fragrance, the feeling, the peace of meditation into their daily life. This is what we want. Life is a beautiful marriage of the inner and the outer. When I nurture my inner world, it's going to flow through into, my behavior, my actions, my family, and my work. I would say today it is so essential to do something for myself on a regular basis. Because look at our world. Our world seems to be becoming more and more challenging. And so I have to care for my mind, care for my feelings, my emotions, and care really for, I would say, my heart, my general well-being. So balance is really the state of self-care, knowing and experiencing who I am, experimenting with this relationship with the divine, putting a little structure in my life to nurture myself. And I really personally do feel that nothing is more important at the moment than to give time to me. As Nikki said at the beginning, it is not selfish, it's common sense. Because when I'm a better me, I'm going to be a much nicer person to live with and work with. And my experience is that if I find myself being angry with the people I love, yelling at the people I love, how do you feel down, deep down inside? You don't like yourself. The effect, it damages your relationship with yourself. When you are really in an elevated state of mind, you don't even have to say anything, but your vibrations will nurture yourself. They will nurture the atmosphere, and they will nurture the people you love around you. Just being in an elevated state of mind. I would say really that it is essential at this time to care for the self and find more balance in life. So I'm going to wind up there, and if you would like to ask some questions, you're most welcome. I think Nikki has just returned, and so maybe she can read out some questions if any questions do emerge.
Thank you, Charlie. I was there all the time listening to you. I guess you have shared very deeply about why it is important to care for the self and how to care for the self. And there is a question that has come up. There's someone asking, I have been struggling with maintaining good relationships with everyone in my life. And I have realized that I sometimes am afraid to open up to others. So the question is, how do I work on breaking the barriers I have subconsciously built?
It's a beautiful question, and I would say the majority of human beings feel the same. But often the whole heart of my life is my relationships with people. But the biggest influence on that is my relationship with myself. And often we keep thinking, why aren't I getting on with people? How can I improve? How can I have a better relationship? Actually, the answer is having a better relationship with myself. As you start to have a healthy relationship with yourself, automatically you will have healthier relationship with others. The biggest influence on my relationships is lack of self-respect. It distorts my perception of other people. When I lack self-respect, I start to believe people are looking down at me. People don't respect me. And that's the reality I create in my mind, but it's actually my creation often. Sometimes not, but mostly because of my lack of self-respect, that's my perception of reality. And you know what I've learned? When you care for yourself and your mind is in a much more elevated state, I would say that you have the capacity to have good wishes, because at the heart of relationship is a communication. And often we think of communication as just speaking, like I am at the moment. But actually, 90% of the impact of communication is nonverbal. It's actually your face and your vibrations, your body language and your vibrations. When you get two messages from people, one is what you hear and one is what you feel, you always trust your feelings. And if you want to get on with other people, the more you care for your soul, who you are, your mind, the more your thoughts are clean and elevated and benevolent, people will love to be around you. People will feel safe with you. But if I sit in the back of my mind, I meet somebody and I smile and say, hi, how are you? But in my mind, I'm thinking, I don't, last time we met, you said this to me, you've done this to me. Those thoughts people feel. They become a barrier to a good relationship. If you want to improve the quality of your relationships with others, first improve the quality of the relationship with yourself and understand the power of good wishes and pure feelings. One of the main things I've learned from the Brahma Kumaris is the power of good wishes. They break down barriers between people. They fill hearts, empty hearts. They heal hearts in pain. When you get these feelings, when you can give these feelings to people, it changes the whole dynamic in a relationship. But where does it begin? It begins with this first relationship with me. I would say if you want to improve your relationships with others, first improve your relationship with yourself. The first step of self-care.
Yeah, Charlie Bhai, and if you could maybe give one or two pointers on what do I do since I'm down there at the moment, what would be the first step to begin with building that relationship with myself?
As I was really saying that, the reason why my relationship with myself is so damaged is I've forgotten who I am. And so my whole thinking and perception of life is distorted by my ego and my lack of self-respect. It completely distorts my perception of everything. And so I've got to spend time to reconnect with my original self, the soul, to visualize myself as a soul and really feel this first relationship. Because as I said, to me, the reason the world is so crazy is because this first relationship in most of us is so deeply damaged. It's not healthy. We might look good on the surface. We might be successful in the external world, but this unhealthy relationship with self damages everything. So I need to give time to sit down, start to create thoughts of who I am, learn how to, in a sense, detach from the temporary self, the body, and really reconnect with the intrinsic, eternal, and permanent self, the soul. And automatically the healing process gently begins to kick in.
Yeah, so time for some personal time for reflection, meditation, and yeah, some silence away
Yeah.
from the noise and the gadgets. So we have another question here. Are there any techniques to improve the time for meditation? My mind keeps wandering after a few seconds of connection with the Supreme.
You know why? Because the greatest myth all of us have been indoctrinated with since a baby, since a child, is that peace, love, and happiness is out there. And so when we sit down quietly, the mind wanders outside searching for love, searching for peace, searching for happiness. That is the greatest myth of life. It's not true. Peace, love, and happiness are all inside me. But it's a habit, and it will happen to everyone. Me and everyone. When we begin to meditate, the mind will wander all over the place. But don't lose hope. Don't lose heart. What I've got to do is begin to feed my mind with quality thoughts of self-awareness. And these quality thoughts of who am I, as I begin to reflect on the self, they begin to transform into experiences. You know, often I say in meditation, the first step is to know, I know I'm the soul. The second step is to believe, I have the faith that yes, I'm the soul. The next 998 steps are converting my knowing and believing into experiencing. And this is meditation, converting what I know into what I feel. So once you begin to go deeper and deeper, and you become more and more, if I can use the language, sort of detached from your body, automatically the knowledge converts into a feeling, a rich feeling of calm, of peace. My whole experience, your whole inner world just cools down and calms down, and you feel really a beautiful feeling of stability and calmness and, in a sense, security, that I know who I am.
So, Chalibai, when we sit in meditation, as you said, converting the knowing into an experience, do I just sit there waiting for something to happen as an experience, or I need to do something for creating that experience?
Yes. You know, as I was just saying, that we have the knowledge of the soul. And in a sense, meditation is unpacking that truth so that I feel it. You know, our education when we go to university, most of us have been, you know, we know so much information, we collect so much information. But spiritual education is totally different. It's taking one idea, going deeper and deeper and deeper. Who am I? I am the eternal soul. And actually, Nikki, I've done over the years, and I still continue to do them, experiments in the laboratory of my mind to convert the knowing into a feeling. So that I take the wisdom of the truth of who I am and I taste the feeling. Of course, it takes time and it takes practice. But there's no greater gift in life when you can sit down and use your own thoughts to create the feeling you want when you want. Yes, it takes practice like anything. And this is why I would say spiritual fitness is meditating daily. And I often say to people in Australia when they start to meditate that do it every day for 3 months. And some days you'll find not much happens and your mind will wander, but still keep doing it. You will learn in time how to sit down, withdraw from the consciousness of the temporary self, the body, become the eternal soul, and start to feel the emanation of that feeling into your mind and into your being. It will happen.
And I know you are going to take us into that experience practically in a few moments. Before that, anybody else has any other questions, anything you want to say while we have this opportunity? You can raise your hand and let us know if you want to ask anything. Asmita, shall I unmute you? 1 second.
Hello,
Yes.
Om Shanti.
Yes, hello, Om Shanti.
Yeah. Hi, Bhai. Actually, my question is that most of the time I have observed one thing, almost 90% of the BKs, those who have progressed to some extent, they speak very less, and though we have actually understand the power of silence. But I experienced this challenge that I used to speak a lot. Now I am in the track to go into that silence mode. But whenever we follow this technique of being more silent, speaking less, so it is a thing that I will always experience from the people, that they feel that this person is not ready to mingle with us because of the silence or not speaking less. So how are we going to get that? Because many times we get into a wrong impression from the other person, thinking that this person has some more attitude, they are not speaking more, or at least they are not responding much. So this kind of impression gets created. So how are we going to handle that?
You know, Asmita, then we really need a balance in life, and actually spirituality, in the early morning, we can remain silent. And we have this really sweet time with the self, to nurture the self, fill my mind, fill my heart with these elevated feelings. And the aim is really, as I step into relationship, into life and responsibility, I bring these feelings with me. Because we have to communicate with people. We can't remain silent around people. Really, silence is not a physical, verbal silence, it's a mental silence. And really, when you learn how to create a quality of thoughts which becomes a feeling of silence in your mind, a fragrance of silence in your mind, people will feel that vibration from you. People will be attracted to that. And so it's really not, a silence which I have around other people. Maybe the more I meditate, I would prefer more meaningful conversations than just conversation for the sake of it. But actually, I find that the more you meditate, the more your thoughts become pure, people feel comfortable with you, people feel happy to be around you. So we need a balance. We really need a balance. I do my meditation in the morning, but during the day, I actually, I bring those feelings into my relationships and my work.
Thank you. Anybody else who wants to ask anything before we step into meditation? There's someone saying, I don't love myself. How to change that?
I would say this is the biggest issue in our world. Like I was saying, that, because this first relationship is so unhealthy, and sometimes I don't like myself, I don't love myself. Sometimes I don't like to say, some people even almost hate themselves. And this is the whole reason for meditation and spirituality, to heal this first damaged relationship. Because I've forgotten who I am. I've become grossly body conscious. And when I see myself getting angry, when I see myself putting people down, when I see myself gossiping, can I like myself? I can't. I can only like myself when I have good thoughts about myself and others, and I have good actions about self and others too. And I know that's easy to say, but how can I do that is when I start to feel the power of the relationship with the divine, with God in my life. it gives you a power to reconnect with myself and redevelop my self-respect. The gift of love from God is your whole self-value rises. You feel comfortable about who you are. And I often feel the flow on is, as much as you have that self-respect, you will respect others. As much as you have self-respect, you will be loving and be loved. As much as you have self-respect, you will be humble. And as much as you have self-respect, life becomes easy. The whole journey of this spiritual path is to regain my self-respect, my self-love. It doesn't happen quickly, if I'm really honest, but step by step. If I look at myself and I say, well, what's changed over 47 years? My relationship with myself has completely transformed. From being perhaps, lacking self-respect in some situations, to feeling quite stable in my self-respect, whether people love me or don't, whether people cooperate with me or don't, whether people respect me or don't, I feel stable in my sense of self. I can learn from those situations, but it doesn't, people's opinions, people's words don't keep changing how I feel about myself. And I can remember the feeling I said to myself that it doesn't matter if I'm criticized. Life means people criticize me. What matters is if that criticism makes me change how I feel about myself. I lose my self-respect. It doesn't matter if I make a mistake. I will make mistakes. It's life. What matters is if that mistake means I lose my self-respect, my self-love. It doesn't matter if I fail. I will sometimes. No one does everything perfectly. What matters is if all the events of life keep changing how I feel about myself, and I'm always putting myself down. So I reinforce this sense of inferiority, not being good enough. The whole of self-care, the whole of spirituality is rebuilding my sense of self. So I have a stable sense of who I am as a soul, and my value, my sense of self-respect remains stable. Yes, this is the biggest learning curve in life, but this is the journey. And this is why this investment in your life is the most precious. I call it blue chip investment, actually. When I invest in my true self and start to heal this damaged relationship with me, and then you will begin to love yourself. But it needs patience. It does need patience.
Yeah, so were you equating like self-respect with self-love there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because they're very, very similar things. I would say that, this relationship with the self is, at the heart of everything in my life. If it's not healthy, even it affects my physical well-being too. They say that when you're happy, your immune system is strong. You could probably say when there's self-love, your immune system is strong. But when there's no self-love and no self-respect, my immune system goes right down. And that's when not only do I feel emotionally upset and mentally exhausted, but physically it affects me too. It's why really this self-care, looking after my inner world is so essential. We neglect it today. And even if one thing comes out of today, I don't know, that I make a decision in my life to do something for me. Because often, we're told what's important is out there. We listen to these things and we say that as soon as we go outside again, the culture of the world is that everything important is outside. So I forget. And then I come back to this place of emptiness once again. This really uncomfortable feeling. Spirituality is filling the emptiness with rich feelings.
There's another question saying that there is some kind of fear inside me. I don't know what is it about. How do I know what am I fearful of? It's something of the unknown, and how do I deal with it?
I think that's a whole nother session, that question. But you know, there's a deep relationship with fear and love. You know, I would say that these are the two prime emotions. We all know how absolutely paralyzing fear is, but we also know how life-transforming love is. Fear is connected to my karmic story. And I'm a soul and I've lived before. And I carry all these experiences in my subconscious. And so when I have a negative experience and I come in front of a similar situation, it just brings fear in my mind. Actually, anxiety is imagined fear. Most of us are so anxious we can't even sleep these days. Because of the past fears, I keep projecting, maybe this will happen. Maybe the economy will go like this and I won't have money. Maybe my parents will get sick. Maybe this, maybe that. And this anxiety doesn't allow me to enjoy the present. Really, I would say that as you develop a spiritual practice, we start to resolve the account of fear, because most of my fear is irrational. We might think of myself as a very rational person, but actually internally my thinking is highly irrational a lot of the time. And I start to learn how to deprogram myself from a lot of my fear. And the parent of fear is the fear of loss of my body, death. And yet really, as we go deeper and deeper into self-awareness, we realize the most natural thing in life. We are going to leave this body, but the soul will continue. I can never die. And when I go deep, deep, deep into these things, it starts to really heal the account of fear.
Sure. Okay, shall we move into meditation now?
Why not? So, thank you so much, Sister Nikki, and thank you everybody for your patience on a Saturday afternoon. Once again, I really love to invite you to try to step away from all the distractions around you, things in the room, gadgets, devices, and let me, for just these few minutes, focus quite deeply internally. Let me sit quietly and begin my journey of self-care. This journey begins with a reconnection to my true self, the eternal soul. Visualize yourself as a tiny spark of life energy residing in the center of the forehead, in the front of the brain. Just hold this image. I, the soul, my natural state is peace. The more I move into a soul-conscious state, my thoughts begin to cool naturally. I feel my whole inner world calming down. And the more I become soul-conscious, peace is my natural state of being. And in this sweet state of self-awareness, I look through the eye of the mind and I visualize the light of God. Visualize a radiant jewel of light emanating the light of pure love, divine love. Allow yourself to be completely loved. Feel the vibrations of this divine love, feeling the essence of my being. This is the ultimate care, to feel this love, this belonging, this union with the lover of the soul. The more I taste this true love, this divine love, it begins to heal the relationship with me. I begin to love myself, respect myself. And my self-value begins to re-emerge. This is the highest union of the human mind, to remember the one who's always pure, an ocean of love and an ocean of peace. The more I remember, the more I am influenced, the more I begin to feel full of these qualities myself. If every morning I wake and I sit down quietly and I visualize myself as a soul and forget all the labels of my body, and then like a small child sit in front of my parent, the Supreme, a real living soul, and allow myself to be loved. This love will heal the deepest pain, the deepest sorrow, the feelings of anxiety and the feelings of depression. Let me experiment. Let me begin each day with this practice and see how it influences my life. To meditate regularly is an act of love for myself. To meditate regularly is an act of love for myself. Thank you. Om Shanti.
Thank you, Chalibai, for sharing your thoughts and that experience of meditation. Essentially, what we can summarize is the root or the seed is actually to begin with the self. And when we say caring for the self is actually nurturing or creating that relationship with the self, to value myself. Thank you to take your time and be with us today. And it was a wonderful session. And thank you to all the participants who are on Zoom as well as on YouTube watching us. And just to share with everyone, so Jagdamba Bhawan, that's the image we have for the retreat center in Pune. It was established about 4 years ago, and it's a beautiful place away from the hustle and bustle of the city where you can spend time. And we have the website mentioned there. We have started programs, and they aren't very frequent now, but yes, we have offline programs happening at the venue. Please do take your time to visit us sometime, and that's the phone number in case you have any queries or you want to get in touch with us. We do offer meditation courses, essentially the knowledge of spirituality that Charlie Bai mentioned in the session of the self and the supreme, and how we can practice that connection with the supreme. So if you can visit us at Jagdamba Bhavan, excellent, or you can find a center near you, and we offer all our services free of charge. You can always make some time and take benefit from your nearest center. Okay, thank you, Charlie Bai. And we look forward to having you with us another session. As you said, fear is a big topic in itself, and I'm sure that is in the air at the moment, with a lot of different reasons. But we'll definitely talk about it and other topics sometime. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nikki, and thank you, everybody. Lovely to meet you. Thank you for your time.